Hey folks, Quill18 here, and welcome to another episode of our base building game series for Unity, codenamed Project Porcupine. And we're going to take a step back from the stockpiles in this episode. There's still a lot of work to do with them, but they technically work and are useful and usable for something. So I'm just going to step back from that for now and do something else, just to try to mix it up and try to add some new features. And what I want to do now is I want to work on oxygen generators. That's one of the things that I have wanted in the game for a while. Part of the reason for, sort of calculating enclosed rooms and so on and so forth is the idea that we will develop an atmosphere within these rooms. So we will be pumping out some sort of gases. I mean, we might just have an oxygen generator, or might decide to go a little bit more for serious and do nitrogen generators, oxygen generators, CO2 scrubbers, and so on and so forth. But for now, just an oxygen generator is going to be sufficient. So I've gone ahead and drawn some beautiful programmer art here for our oxygen generator, which looks like this. I got to put it on the furniture's layer and line it up sort of vaguely like this. Right now, it's just a sprite, but there it is. I got, I don't know, a box with like a tube coming out of it or something like that, and it says O2 on it. Shut up, it's beautiful. Yeah, at 1.0, this variant of programmer is going to have to be replaced. But one of the things I want to do with this is, first of all, I mean, the idea of a gas generator and all those things is going to be cool, which means we'll have to have stats for our room so that it's aware of how much gases it's got in there, what the atmospheric setup of the room is. And then we'll have to figure out ways to, like, what happens when a wall gets breached, combining rooms, and so on and so forth. But before we get to any of that, what we are going to do is this is going to be the very first piece of furniture that we put into the game, which is not a one-tile thing. So really, what we're implementing in this episode, and potentially the next episode, and I don't know, maybe the next 15 episodes, depending on how long this takes, is we're not actually implementing the oxygen generator as much as we're implementing multi-tile furniture. So that's what we're going to be doing right over here. It's the idea that this is a 2x2 piece of gear that will occupy this place. And later on, we'll do sofas and workbenches and all this. But the oxygen generator is not going to need a person to work it. So we don't have to worry about like figuring out where the person stands or any of those things. We just have to make sure that the oxygen generator, which gets installed in a tile, sort of like we have to, when you drag it around, what does that look like? What does that feel like? Where do you click? Because right now when we build furniture, right, if I build a door, I'm clicking on a tile, or I can even click and drag these tiles. But obviously that's not going to really make much sense with the O2 generator because we need, it's a 4x4 thing. The other thing we don't have right now is a sort of a preview mode attached to the mouse, and what we'll probably want to do is work on that. So it's going to be a lot of user interface things, plus our furniture code in there to do the size stuff. So let's go and start to implement this. First of all, where do we actually define our furniture? Again, we don't have an XML file for this. So right now, all of our furniture comes from our world module, or world model class, which when we open it up, it's got a create furniture prototype function in it. Anytime now. And what we're going to do is go and define it in there. So create furniture prototypes right there. Perfect. And this is where we create all of our furniture. So I'm just going to make a new one over here. I'll copy, I don't know, I'll copy door or something as sort of a baseline over here. Again, this is all going to get XMLified or JSONified or something later on. So we're going to call this one oxygen generator, like that. Make sure the name goes in. And the pathfinding cost, I don't think I want people to be able to walk through this, or, they shouldn't walk through this. We're going to be really slow. If you need to force your way through it, you can crawl through the pipes or whatever, but it's going to be, sorry, this is cost, so it should be like 10 times more expensive to walk through. Yes, that's right. Now, it's got a width of 2 and a height of 2. We don't know what that means yet, but it's going to do something. It doesn't link to neighbors, and it doesn't include enclosed rooms or anything like that. And I mean, it's gonna have an update function, but we don't really have anything like that now. So we'll just go and bop that out. We're not going to define a job prototype for it right now either, so that it doesn't actually have any components or time or anything like that. We can just go and instantly build it. Okay, so we've got that there. We also, right now, these UI buttons do not get automatically generated. We probably will want to do that, but for now, what we're going to have to do is go to the build menu and say, grab the door button, copy it, and this is going to be oxygen generator, and hit enter there so it actually locks it in, which I always forget to do. And the label, oxygen generator, which is quite long. Here, O2. generator. There we are. Better for the label. And when we click it, we set the build mode to say the building type is oxygen generator. There we are. So now we should be able to hit play. And, I don't know, load a map. Sure, why not? And click build O2 generator and click over here. And we've got that. And that's fine. But we don't, at this time, pay any attention to the furniture size in any way whatsoever. So the oxygen generator is being installed in this one tile. Its sprite is centered on it, which is why it looks like that. Get out of the way. It looks like that. But that's not what we want to do. We want it to take up a 2x2 place, so we want the sprite to sort of be centered on this intersection effectively, which is all fine and good, and we can do that sort of thing. But let's get started. So let's take a look at our furniture class. Obviously, our furniture class is for the first part where we need to be aware of size. Now, we do have this height and width in here, but we don't use it, right? If I do a search for like the width reference, we're grabbing it, a copy of it from the constructor or the copy constructor, we're storing it, but at no point are we doing anything at all for this. So, place instance. And this is what we actually use to place an instance of a furniture prototype. So this function takes a furniture prototype. It's a static function, by the way. It takes an instance of a furniture prototype and a target tile, and it puts the furniture in that tile. But again, we currently assume that we are 1 by 1, which we can't do. So this is where we verify that the furniture can actually be placed there. So we are going to... So I guess the tile.place furniture actually gets the work done, doesn't it? Yeah, so what furniture, the static furniture place instance does is it instantiates, it makes a clone of the prototype, and then it tells the tile, hey, put this in there. And then the tile does the actual work of placing the furniture in there. But a couple of things need to get done here. First of all, obviously this furniture truly exists in more than one tile. And that's really the truth. This piece of furniture really exists in more than one tile. But presumably, there might still be like the master tile. So imagine, for example, in our little example here, if I were to say, build an O2 generator, and I'm going to click on this tile right over here. And the idea being that this will be sort of the parent tile, which presumably might be like the top left tile, or I'm trying to remember how our tiles grow, actually. It would probably actually be the bottom left tile. So if I were to click here, the oxygen generator should really sort of sit here. Or rather, not if I click there. More logically, it should be like, if I call that function with this tile as the target, the O2 generator should in fact occupy this 2x2 space over here, being centered on this intersection. So whatever tile is the tile that gets passed to this function here should basically be used as the bottom left corner. And I just say that because our tile coordinates grow as we go upwards and rightwards. So that just makes the most logical sense. So what we're going to do is probably modify place furniture in tile to tile.place furniture, because it's actually responsible for putting the tile in place. So here we create a clone of the prototype and we tell the object what its parent tile is, which is only going to be one of the tiles it actually occupies, but it's the so-called master tile. And so this gets called here. And so what we need to do is check to see if if its size is greater than 1 by 1, we need to work on more than one tile. So we sort of kind of have to call this, I don't think we'd call this recursively. I think instead what we do is we iterate in here. And I think that's probably the best way to do it. So almost something like for x off, which starts at our tile's x position and ends at x plus object instance dot width. Really? We don't have an accessor for that? See, I gotta stop making things like too private. Like, is there any reason? Yeah, we wouldn't want someone from outside this to set it, but again, for now, Doing this is fine. I mean, I guess it could be a read only that only gets set within the copy constructor as well. And yes, we could do something like a get protected set. Like if we're worried about the sort of security on object, we can do all these sorts of things. But at this point, since it is only our code and not some external module, it's really not the end of the world. But if we do this, so now we can access it out of here. Although I feel like for consistency, this should actually be uppercase, because that's usually what you do with properties. And that's what we do with our x and y, so we'll do that. And that's okay. So now we're going to be looping where x starts at the x coordinates of the tile, and it loops until we hit x plus object width, well, less than x.object width, because obviously if the width is 1, then we just want it to loop while it, oh, hold on. Yeah. So it'll always loop one time, which is going to be great. And then we do another one, which is y offset. And actually, I guess I should just copy this. That's probably the easiest way of doing it. So y starts at y, that's a y, and it's a y, and we're going to keep saying that over and over again. Dot height y. Okay, so then we're going to loop. So the x and y based on the width and height of the furniture, and we're going to loop within that. Like so. Do not return here. So, okay. Actually, I think we might iterate twice. Do we have a way to check whether something is legal? How do we check that? When we want to build something somewhere, do we not have a function to confirm that you're allowed to build something in a tile? In our controller, like our build mode controller, do we verify that? What do we call? How do we verify that? I think there is something. We're mostly just queuing things up, and it turns out that some of the tiles aren't allowed. And we may not actually be explicitly checking ahead of time for the build. So this is do build of something in a tile. We make sure it's got a thing. Is furniture placement valid? So we have a function in a world that returns that. So it's a portion, it's the furniture itself. The furniture has an is valid position. Right, callback for a tile. Which checks to see that by default, normally it assumes that, hey, is the tile a floor? Does it not have furniture? Excellent. But it only does that for a single tile. Okay. So what we actually have to do first is we have to, this function here, to make sure that the placement is valid, we actually have to update this first for the height and width. Do I want to loop here? Excuse me. Or here? I don't know where, I mean, right now, functionally, it makes no difference. I'm trying to figure out later on what makes more sense. I guess for now, what I'll do is I'll do a loop here. The same sort of logic as we've got going on there, which was, actually, let me copy that to start off with. So tile.x is less than our own width. And then the y variant, actually, again, it'll just be, I think, a little faster if I grab this variant because there's less alteration to be made, is the tile.y, tile.x, missed that one, tile.y, and our own width. And then what we want to do is say tile t2 is equal to t.world dot get tile at x off. I mean, it's not really the offset at this point. It's the actual x coordinate, but that's fine. And then what we want to do is check those tiles. So it's always going to start by checking the tile t itself, but sometimes it'll check more than that. And there might be ways to optimize these and things like that, but that's okay. So we're making sure that the tile, for each one of these tiles within this block, we're checking that each one of them is floor and doesn't already have furniture. If any of those things ever happen, we return false right away. Otherwise, we finish this entire loop and return true, and that's going to be okay. This should really never get called. But right now, so this is back in our tile place furniture. We're verifying that there's not already furniture here. Now, in theory, we should have already done our homework and made sure that all the position is valid. But at some point here, we put in an extra check. And I don't think we need to do that here. I think it might be good to still do an extra check in case we end up calling place furniture without having called placement valid before. But why don't we say object instance dot is position valid this? Because we've got that function already made. And different furniture will have different rules as to what's valid or not. Now, obviously, you should never get in a situation where you've got furniture already in there, but is valid position should be checking for that for us. So equals false. So we're going to say trying to assign furniture to a tile that isn't valid. Now, it might be valid because there's already something, but we don't know. So we'll just return false to indicate that this failed. So now we will go and clear that out. And there we go. So we still check to see, because we could get past a null variant here, which means we're uninstalling the furniture. So all we're doing is looping through each tile and telling each tile that your furniture is not null. Oh, right, because this could be null as well. If. So is not equal to null. And that. Now here's an interesting question. What if we get past? Oh, this could all be this could all be null. Okay, I think we need a separate catch at the start here, because none of these things, we obviously can never do object instance dot anything, including dot width, if it's null. So first we'll do a check. If object instance is equal to null, just uninstalling. Fix me. What if we have a multi-tile furniture? Then we'd need, so really what we need is a separate function for that. Let's assume something like that. Let's make another function here. That is actually uninstall furniture. Hell, it could even be public. Public bool uninstall furniture, which you could call directly. Or if you call place furniture with a null, that will work too. So for now, we'll just call uninstall furniture and actually return it because it's got a boolean as well. That's going to be fine. And we're just going to set furniture to be equal to null, which obviously will not handle the case of multi-tiles. But for now, we're going to call that sufficient. Because we don't even have like a proper bulldoze button. We do have something, but not really. So we're just going to bail out for now. So right now, destroying multi-tile furniture is broken. So we'll fix it later. Okay, so first we check that object instance is if it's equal to null. We're uninstalling. We just call that. We're done. Then we make sure that the object can actually be placed here, and we return false if we need to, and then we're done. Now what we do is we loop through every tile. We don't need to do this anymore because literally object instance couldn't be null because everything would break anyway. So what we're just doing is telling this particular tile, what was going on here? I don't know, but what I really want to do is do a tile t, no, lowercase. Oh, I had caps lock on. Oh, tile t is equal to world.get tile at x off, y off, which obviously for the first iteration will always be ourselves, but that's going to be okay. That's a relatively fast function, so I don't think it's too bad. And we don't place furniture every frame at all, so this is going to be perfectly fine. And when we can say t.furniture is equal to obj instance, and there we go. And then we return true when we're done. I think that works. So, what? Oh, okay, let's test something here. Graphically, it'll still look messed, but that's whoa. All right, something else is broken too. Let me just clear this again. Build floor, build wall. and dead. Okay. Oh, then all you're doing is complaining that you don't have the stuff. All right, load this one. There you go. So what's the first actual error? Collapse is good, but null reference tile object reference not set to an instance of an object. So furniture 188. Do you not have the validation function? So what's happening? This must be the call from here. Let's see here from tile 116 and the tile thing 116. We are trying to call is valid position on the object instance, and that breaks. So that to me tells me that when we are cloning, or rather using our copy constructor over here, we are not copying the validation code from the prototype. Yeah. Which is fine. So this is where we copy some functions. Func position validation. So we want to clone those. And what's the... It's tile bool. There we go. So we need to make sure we copy that validation function, because right now it was null. We were trying to call a null function there. Okay, good. So I think I can click on building an O2 generator here, and it will do that. So the graphic is still messed, but if we mouse over, we can see in the little tooltip down here, you can see that this bottom left corner, which is one I clicked on, says oxygen generator, and so does the one at the top, top right, and just to the right. They're all oxygen generators. So these four tiles correctly are aware that they have an oxygen generator within them. And they happen to all be pointing to the exact same one, which is here. So what's missing now is to have the tile visually look good. But what we can also do is test the pathfinding here. If I say build a door here and build a door here, yes, you'll go around the oxygen generator. If you're forced to, you can crawl through it. It's got a movement cost of 10, so you'll be moving through at 1/10 the normal rate. But wonderful. Okay. So let's fix the visual side of things now. Oh, this is actually going a little bit better than expected. So we have our furniture sprite controller over here. This is the thing that's responsible for having the sprite be visual. I just realized I never embiggened by font. I'm terribly sorry. God. And so we have on furniture created here, and we also have on furniture changed. I can't imagine a situation of on furniture changed where the sprite would ever end up being a different size, or the object would be a different size. So let's assume that's not going to be the case for now. If we end up with a case later on where on furniture changed can get called in such a way that the sprite needs to be repositioned, then we'll deal with that at that point. But for now, in on furniture created, we are simply placing the furniture at the same position as the tile in world space. And if we were still using the bottom left corner, yeah, we're back to there. If we were still using the bottom left corner of the image as the anchor point, then actually we'd be done already. But we're not. We're using the center. And as it turns out, that turns out to be way, 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 way easier for almost everything. But with this multi-sprite, we have to offset it. We have to position this sprite not in line with the tile itself, but rather in line with the sort of middle point of the multi-tile area. So what are we going to do here? So here's we set the position based on the sprite. So we need to offset this for multi-tile sprites. And I guess we just offset it by half the width, don't we? Because, yeah, hang on. Let's visualize this here. If I click here, it's currently centered here. It's got a width of 2. But if I just offset it by 1, it'll be here. So is it the width minus 1 and then half of that? Is that correct? I mean, it's going to be correct in this case, but I'm not sure that's correct overall. So for a 1 by 1, that's correct, because if you do the width minus 1, you end up by 0, and divided by 2, that's still 0. So you end up with no offset, which is right. In the case of something that's 2 wide, 2 minus 1 is 1, divided by 2 is 0.5, which is the correct amount of offset. What about in the case of something that is 3 wide? Well, 3 minus 1 is 2, divided by 2 is an offset of 1, which means it'll be centered in this tile, which is correct. Okay, I think that is right. So what we want to do is say x plus the furniture dot width minus 1 divided by 2. And I believe with the order precedence that is correct. Although, I mean, if we're concerned, you can always be safer with more parentheses. And then this will be plus the height, the height. Let's try that. O2 generator, I'm going to click right down here. No. What? Game, what you do to me? Well, I mean, okay, so the job preview could certainly be off for lots of reasons. Why is it here and not there? Are these integers? They might be integers. Yeah, they are. So, because we're dividing an integer by 2, it's rounding it down. Is it as simple as doing this being a float? Will that preserve the decimal point like I want, or do I have to do some more casting? I don't know. Let's just use the pathfinding test so he's not busy. Click there. There we go. Okay, excellent. So that's fine. The job preview isn't being set to the correct position yet, but everything else is. Beautiful. So let's go and do that with the job. So job sprite controller. Again, and this might be a good example of like where subclassing different things would be good. We're going to keep going like this for now, since mostly it's just a one-time fix. So it's the same thing with the job over here, where it places. So on job created, it's putting the sprite right there. So really, we can grab. Is it literally the same? No, job.tile x. Not quite the same. Get sprite for furniture. Job.object type is a string. That's interesting. So at no point does the job doesn't keep a reference to what we're building. It's got the one string for job object type that we're using that as an internal way to have hints for sprites and things like that. Because job object type could be non-furniture things as well later on, but we don't properly check that. I mean, I could go and store a job object prototype, or a furniture prototype reference. And that's probably the best way. I mean, there's a certain sort of idea of like the purity of design where you don't go and have these weird sort of specific things in here. But is there really a reason, just like when we set up this thing, like for the sake of argument, for now, I'll tell you what, for now we'll literally take the lazy way out and say furniture prototype. So when we create a job, we're going to store a reference to the furniture prototype in there, and then that way we can reference it for various things if it comes up. Is that a good idea? I don't know. We'll probably change it later on, but for now it's going to be quite handy. So we're going to say something like j.furniture prototype is equal to our furniture type, which is a string. Hold on. Yeah, hold on. Do we actually ever grab one here? Well, I mean, I guess we can just look it up. It's fine. Furniture job prototypes contains key furniture. Well, that's the job prototype. Let's do something like dot furniture prototypes for furniture type. Is this not dot furniture? Go to declaration is what I want you. Here, we'll just make this public. For now, we'll probably end up refining this later on, but for now, this is going to be a very helpful little thing. Where was I? Oh, it's build mode controller over here. Now we can say furniture prototypes like this. So we're going to store a reference to this furniture prototype. As you know, if anyone wants to know, it's in there. Sometimes it'll be null, sometimes it won't be because it might not be a furniture job. But having done that now, over in the job sprite controller, I can say, when we create our graphic over here, I can say the same thing as before, which is job.furnitureprototype.width -1 divided by 2f. Again, I don't think I need parentheses over here because the order operation should be fine. But it can, sometimes it hurts clarity, sometimes it helps clarity. Hijita over here, oops. And divided by 2f. So now, assuming I haven't goofed that up completely, we should get the preview in the right place, and we do. There we go. So our little construction interface is still weird. Like, what happens if I do this? Queues up all the jobs, and then it tries to place the other, although luckily the actual code to verify when it tries to place down the furniture correctly determines that, no, you can't do that. So obviously the user interface for queuing up a job needs a little bit of an update for this, because clicking and dragging is very helpful for walls. That's awesome. You can't do it right now because it doesn't have any steel plates. It's a very questionable utility for doors. In fact, I don't think you need to do that. Really, other than floors and walls, do you ever need to click and drag anything? Is an interesting question. And I suspect the answer might be no. I don't know, maybe later on we'll have carpets or something like that. But presumably, in our builder system or furniture system or something, we're going to want some sort of hint to the user interface for things that make sense to be dragged versus things that don't make sense. And in particular as well, with these 2x2 objects, when you click on it or click on anything, it would be nice if there was a little graphic following your mouse, very similar to the job preview of the piece of furniture and where it's going to be put. And that's not as critical for 1x1s, because you just click in a tile and it happens there. But with the 2x2, you really want to see where it's going to be placed. And ideally, I think for the 2x2, like what tile does it get locked on? Like, are we going to want to click on this tile here for the oxygen generator? Or are we going to want to click on the middle point to get things done? And that has certain implications about just how we calculate the preview and then how we pass the target tile to things. But I think that's what we're going to deal with next time. I think we're going to improve the user interface for building, in particular for these 2x2 objects. But we now have very simple, very basic support for objects that are larger than one tile. And it turned out to be a lot less painful than I thought it would be. Thank you very much for watching this episode, folks. Again, next episode will be user interface work, which is always, user interface. I'm a back-end programmer. I don't like front-end stuff, which is why my programmer art always sucks as well. But it's got to be done. It's got to be done, and it will be really satisfying once we finish. Thanks for watching. See you next time. Thank you everyone who pledged on Patreon in April and who are supporting these videos from May through to early June. And to these mic check level supporters, we've got Wes Oldenboiving, Craig Mortel, Neil Balaki Milner, Speedy Savant, Valiant Cake Fiend, Aaron Toivson, Marius Field Vold, Jan Torrevel, Julian Auger Lafont, Steven Stager, Michael McClintock, Kale the Quick, Drazion, Bite Rash, Adjective, Jason Yanti, and to absolutely everyone who watches and shares and favorites and subscribes to these videos. Appreciate you all. Thank you very so much, and I'll see you next time.